The first morning. There was no calendar, no ticking of clocks, no ringing bells or dates to be remembered. Only the wind, only the smell of ripening grass, only the warmth on skin that told the bones summer had come. The child did not open their eyes at once. They felt first. The ground beneath was soft with gathered moss and the skin of animal hide. The smell of wood smoke was distant now, replaced by wildflowers, dry earth, and something new in the air, something that stirred the chest like a memory not yet lived. A morning before words, a morning before stories, but the world was already speaking. Overhead, the trees stretched like elders, their arms leaf-thick and trembling with songbirds. The birds sang not in melody but in rhythm, a call and response from one branch to another, a language older than speech, a music of arrival. The child stretched slowly. Their bones were still growing, their body still lean from spring's lean meals and long walks. A necklace of carved shell, gift from their mother, lay cool against their collarbone. It clicked softly as they moved, a small sound swallowed by the forest's breath. From the cave behind, the soft rustle of family waking. Grandmother's quiet humming a tune that was not quite song but more than silence. Mother's whisper, the creak of firewood. But the child waited still. This morning felt sacred. Not religious, there were no temples here, but sacred like the first footprints on damp earth. The child knew without knowing, today was different. They opened their eyes. Above, the sky was not yet blue. It was silver, pale, like the belly of a fish turned to the light. A thin mist hung in the trees, and the world glowed. Summer had not yet revealed herself fully. She was stretching too, waking like them, pulling her warmth across the land like a blanket. The child sat up. Around them, the world was alive. Beetles moved through moss. A bird darted low, catching a mayfly mid-air. Ants formed lines across a fallen branch. There was no word for ecosystem, but the child felt it in their chest, this pulsing network of life breathing together. A movement in the distance. The deer were already up. A mother and her fawn crossing the stream quietly, their hooves never slipping. The child watched in stillness. To move now would break something, not just the moment, but the connection. So they waited, learning something wordless from the way the fawn followed its mother, trusting the invisible path in her steps. From behind came the crack of a stick. Brother, taller now, nearly grown. He smiled without words and motioned with his chin. Come. There would be berries this morning, maybe mushrooms, maybe even eggs from the gulls if they climbed the cliffs before the sun got hot. But still the child waited a heartbeat longer, one last breath of this sacred stillness. Then they stood. Bare feet touched the ground. Not just ground, but place the land remembered. Here, grandfather hunted before he was a father. Here, mother hid from a storm while carrying them in her belly. The child did not know these stories yet, but the soil did, and the body felt it. They walked lightly. No shoes, no straps, just skin and earth. Each step a whisper, each leaf a signal. The world was not silent. It was alive with sound. The hum of insects, the creak of trees, the soft roar of wind high in the canopy. And beneath it all, something deeper. A rhythm, like a drum in the chest of the world. The others were waiting near the edge of the trees. Mother with her braids tied back. Grandmother seated on a stone, sharpening bone tools with a rhythm that matched the forest's beat. Brother holding a woven basket. Sister still yawning, wrapped into deerskin, her eyes half closed. They did not speak much in the mornings, not out of rule but out of reverence. The forest spoke. Why interrupt? The child joined them. Together they moved not in a line, not in a group, but like a flock, loosely bound by motion and purpose, a shared knowing. Today they would gather. Tomorrow maybe they would fish, or track, or play near the caves where the light danced off stone and stories were painted in ochre. But today was for walking, for foraging, for finding what the land had hidden and now revealed. The sun rose higher. Mist gave way to warmth. The child felt it on their shoulders, their cheeks, their open hands. They were a vessel for light, a cup filled by the sky, and with every step the world whispered, "You belong here. You always have." They paused by the stream. Cool water, smooth stones. A frog leapt and was gone. Brother crouched to drink. Grandmother picked mint leaves for tea. Mother lifted her face to the sky, eyes closed, letting the sun kiss her brow. The child bent low and touched the water. It was colder than expected, biting but clean. They cupped it, drank, and let the rest fall through their fingers. Watching it return to the earth felt like understanding a secret. Something about cycles, about taking only what you need, about giving back. Further on, a fallen tree. Carved into its bark were marks. Not letters, there were none, but symbols. Lines scratched by stone, a spiral, a sunburst. A mark made last summer, perhaps by cousin, perhaps by the child themselves. The child traced it now, feeling the groove, remembering the moment, the laughter, the storm that followed. Every summer had storms. Big ones, loud, cracking open the sky. But not today. Today was still. Today was golden. Today was a gift. And the child knew, without knowing, that summers would return again and again. That even after they were gone, other children would wake in this place. Other feet would touch this same ground. Other hands would touch the bark. And maybe, just maybe, feel the same joy, the same warmth, the same sense of being right where they were meant to be. Before the sun had a name, before the months were counted, summer arrived by scent and wind. And a child, barefoot and silent, walked into the morning. The camp breathes. Every tent has its own heartbeat. The clan is alive. The sun has not yet reached its full height, but light already spills across the open clearing like warm milk from a tilted shell. Shadows stretch long and sleepy over the dew-slick earth. The camp, scattered across the flat of a gentle hill, does not open its eyes all at once. It stirs. It breathes. A curl of smoke rises first, from the women's fire, thin and blue and barely alive like a spirit not yet decided on the day. A soft cough from one tent, a rustle from another. Someone shifts beneath a bear hide. A child's elbow presses into a mother's ribs. She winces, grunts softly, and the waking begins. There are 7 tents in all, each stitch from hide and sinew bent over a frame of bones and wood. No 2 are the same. One leans to the left, drunk from last night's storm. Another is stiff and proud, its entrance lined with red ochre handprints. Inside each a different rhythm. A baby suckles, an old man snores, a dog scratches at fleas, and the child, our child, blinks at the roof above, the leather breathing in the breeze, and knows it is morning. Outside, the air smells of ash and pine and something green beginning to grow. The mothers are first. They rise without ceremony, tie their hair with quick fingers, and stoop over the fire pit. Their hands move without thought, gathering dried dung, striking flint, blowing until ember becomes flame. One hums softly, a song her grandmother sang, low and without words. Another slaps a child's hand away from the food pouch. Not yet, her eyes say. The fathers move slower, deliberate as boulders. They stretch, crack joints, piss into the trees. Then they sit by the edge of the camp, sharpening tools. Flint scrapes bone, stone kisses stone. The rhythm is hypnotic. Scrape, turn, test. A spearhead glints in the sun, notched just so. A scraper's edge is honed to shave meat from hide. The tools are not weapons yet. They're extensions of the hand, of the clan's will. In this moment, they are instruments of peace, of preparation. Children swarm like ants around a fallen fig. Some still wipe sleep from their eyes, others already sprint barefoot across the dirt, chasing insects with sticks, screaming with delight. One has painted her face with berry juice. Another rides a dog like a horse, giggling until he's thrown. No one scolds. Laughter is not punished here, and the dogs, half wolves really, are everywhere. Some sleep in the sun, their tongues lolling out. Others bark at unseen birds or roll in the grass, their tails thumping joyfully. They are not pets, they're clan. They watch the children, warn of danger, and in winter give their warmth without asking. The child, our child, moves through it all with quiet eyes, watching, learning, the way a mother adds just enough ash to slow the fire, the way a father tests the weight of a spear. The child's fingers are restless. They pick at bark, draw circles in the dust, mimic the scraping rhythm on a flat stone. Today the child will learn something new, perhaps how to tie sinew tight enough to hold a spearhead, or how to trace the stars with your finger to find the way home, or maybe just how to listen, to the wind, to the birds, to the breath of the earth beneath bare feet. In the centre of the camp is the circle, not drawn but known, a place where stories are told, where meat is shared, where laughter collects like rain in a bowl. This morning an elder sits there already, her legs crossed, eyes closed. She is humming, not for anyone else, just for the day. Around her neck are beads carved from mammoth ivory, worn smooth by years of touch. Children crawl near her, hoping for a tale. But she does not speak yet. The day is too young. Stories must wait until the sun is high. The air begins to warm. Smoke rises thicker now. A pot of roots and bones bubbles. Someone cracks open a marrow bone with a stone. A woman wipes grease from her fingers and braids her daughter's hair with feathers. Nearby, a man whistles through a hollow reed, calling birds. One answers, and still the camp breathes. Its lungs are the fires, the dogs, the children's feet pounding the earth. Its heartbeat is the hammering of stone, the stirring of pots, the laughter spilling from tents. The clan is not a place. It is a living thing. It sings without a mouth. It remembers without a name. A hawk circles above. Its shadow crosses the camp and vanishes. No one notices, but the child does. The child always does. In time the hunters will gather. Plans will be whispered. Tracks studied in the mud. But now there is no need for urgency. The sun is not yet cruel. The day stretches ahead, fat and full and waiting. A small boy stumbles near the fire and is caught by his brother before he falls. Their mother doesn't look up. She trusts. She knows. The women are cleaning skins now, stretching them taut over frames, scraping with stone. The smell of old blood mixes with smoke. It is not unpleasant. It is the smell of work, of usefulness, of survival. One of the elders sharpens a bone needle and threads sinew through it with practiced ease. She sews a tear in a baby sling. No one speaks much. Words are saved for stories, for warnings, for songs. The child sits beside her mother, watching, eyes wide. She hands the child a scrap of hide and a blunt needle. No instructions are given, only a look, a challenge. The child begins to sew. This is how knowledge passes, quietly like breath between teeth. No chalk, no slate, only hands, only eyes, only time. A shout breaks the quiet. Someone has found honey. The boys run toward the sound, the dogs bark, the elders sigh. It is a good day. And the camp, the camp. It inhales, exhales, shifts, sighs. It is not perfect. A tent leaks, a child cries, a bone breaks beneath a careless foot. But it lives, that is enough. Our child watches it all. Every movement, every glance. These are not just moments, they're instructions. Because one day, this child will strike the flint, will lead the hunt, will tell the stories, will sit by the fire as younger eyes watch, wondering, learning. But for now, the camp breathes, and so does the child. The path of little feet. The forest is still half asleep when the child rises, eyes barely open, fingers curled like fern tips unfolding at dawn. A soft rustle of feet on moss. A quiet breath. The world smells of damp bark and dew-wet stone. Mist clings to the roots, and bird calls echo like questions in a quiet classroom. Somewhere, far off, a stream hums beneath the canopy. This is where the day begins, not with firelight or fish broth, but with the first step onto the worn trail where others have walked before. They do not go alone. The elder sibling walks ahead, taller, surer, already carved by summers past. Or perhaps it is grandmother, her hair a halo of bone-white braids, her hands more wrinkled than the birch trees. They speak little. Words are not needed in this lesson. Each step is a whisper to the earth. The path winds through ancient places where roots crack stone and time is measured in the slow, endless stretch of growing things. Here the child is told to walk gently, not out of fear but respect. For every rock has watched many pass, for every leaf once listened to rain. See this? The older one points to a broken twig, its green inside still wet. That was no wind. They crouch low, fingers brushing the earth, inhaling its secrets. A hoof print, shallow and recent. The curve of a deer's passage, a single strand of fur caught on a thorn. She was here. She passed before the sun climbed high. The child leans in, squinting, heart racing. They are learning to read the world, not through symbols etched on bark or carved in stone, but in signs left behind. Claw marks on a tree trunk, the pattern of crushed grass, the silence of birds that moments ago sang. The forest teaches. A squirrel chatters angrily, warning others of their presence. A jay flashes blue in a streak of defiance. The elder pauses. Pay attention, they murmur. Not all warnings are meant for us, but all are worth hearing. The child listens. A rhythm begins to grow in their feet, a memory not taught but inherited. How to place heel before toe, how to breathe with the wind, how not to disturb the world more than necessary. Sometimes they pause, to taste wild berries, tart and red, to feel the smooth coolness of a stone shaped by river water, to watch ants carry dreams 1,000 times their weight across fallen logs. Sometimes the lesson is in stillness. They crouch for a long time near a patch of disturbed earth. The elder says nothing. The child feels the hum in their bones. This is how they learn. Not through command, but through presence, through waiting until the land speaks first. Fox, the elder finally says, touching the faint paw prints. She hunts at night. If she's thin, the rabbits are clever. The child nods, storing the knowledge like a tucked-away spark. They move deeper where the forest is older. Trees creak like old bones, and light falls in golden fragments scattered like fire. The air is cooler, filled with the scent of damp leaves and bark long fallen. There's a spot where mushrooms grow in a perfect ring. A spirit sat here once, grandmother whispers. Maybe still does. The child doesn't laugh. They've seen things in the corner of their eye that vanished when turned toward. The forest is not empty. It is full of life, of lessons, of ghosts. Each plant they pass is named, not with letters but with stories. This one heals when your belly aches. This one stings unless you ask it kindly. This one feeds the bees. This one feeds the dead. The child listens not just with ears, but with breath and skin. They will remember the shape of leaves, the time they bloom, the smell they carry on warm afternoons. This is how wisdom's passed, not by age alone, but by observation, reverence, repetition. A hawk calls overhead. The elder stops, shielding their eyes. East, they say, she circles where the rabbits run. And so they veer, soundless as shadow. There are no clocks here, no bells to toll the hour. but still time moves, shadows stretch, the sun climbs, the stomach rumbles. The child glances back toward camp, but knows the way is forward. Eventually, they come to a clearing. It is a place of memory where other feet have stood. A flat stone holds the remains of an old fire, charcoal grey, surrounded by cracked bone and a forgotten carving. A spiral, a handprint, a story perhaps. The elder places a hand on the child's shoulder. Sit, they say. And so they sit side by side as the wind shifts and the trees murmur of those who came before. Before you learn to run, you learn to follow, they whisper again. But the child understands now. It is not just footsteps they follow. It is knowledge, pattern, instinct, a sacred thread that runs from ancient ones to those yet born. They rise together. The child's steps are still small, but now they leave a mark. Games by the river. The sun rode high, lazy and golden, draped in the blue shawl of summer sky. The wind, no longer wild, sang softly in the reeds, and the river called. It always called. To the grown ones, the river was life, a source of fish, of water, of coolness in the sun-baked days. But to the children, it was something else entirely. It was laughter and mischief. It was freedom that splashed. Little feet pounded along the worn dirt trail that led to the riverbank, bare and eager, leaving soft prints in the dust. The youngest ran like the wind, arms spread wide as if to fly with the dragonflies that danced ahead of them. Older ones chased after, grinning, shouting, their voices tangled with the calls of birds above. The river curled gently through the forest, its banks overgrown and familiar. Here it was shallow and kind. It glistened in patches of sunlight like a trail of scattered stars. Smooth stones lined the edge, warmed by the day. The children knew every bend, every log, every sunken secret the water tried to hide. They arrived with the ceremony of chaos. Shrieks of delight pierced the stillness. One by one they leapt into the shallows, some boldly, others tiptoeing, squealing as the cold clutched their legs. Water splashed, frogs scattered, the birds took flight. In moments the river was alive with children. Some floated on their backs, staring up at clouds and dreaming. Others raced from one side to the other, counting paces, giggling when they slipped and fell. One girl climbed onto a rock and claimed it as her throne, declaring herself queen of the river reeds. They played games passed down from no book, just muscle memory and laughter. Stone-skipping flat stones were tested like treasures. 1, 2, 3 skips, 4 if the throw was perfect. A boy shouted with joy as his stone danced across the surface. Another tried to beat it, but hers sank with a plop and a groan. The mud beast. In a shallow cove where the bank dipped low, 2 children covered themselves in mud from head to toe, pretending to be river spirits. They chased others with outstretched arms and monstrous roars until the game dissolved in hysterics. The driftwood race sticks were launched upriver, dropped into the current with whispered wishes. Then the chase began, running along the banks, cheering their pieces of wood as if they were warriors in a battle none could see. The winner's stick would be caught at the curve, always greeted with a chorus of whoops. But not all moments were loud. In one quiet corner, shaded by a leaning tree, 2 children built a tiny world. They used pebbles and grass to make homes for beetles, carved little bowls out of bark, filled them with water, and imagined the lives of creatures too small to be noticed. Others gathered reeds and wove them into crowns. They crowned each other kings and queens, warriors and hunters, ghosts and river gods. A boy with freckles lay still on the warm stones, staring up through the leaves. He counted clouds. He named them. That one was a bison. That one, a cave. That one looked like the fire his father built every morning. When a shadow passed overhead, hawk or eagle, he watched in awe, saying nothing. Somewhere upstream, an older girl found a secret. a hollow beneath the roots of an old tree where the river had cut a tiny cave. It was just big enough for two. She called her closest friend, and together they hid there, whispering dreams and secrets they wouldn't say aloud back in camp. Their voices were hushed, sacred, like the way you speak in the dark. And always, always the river listened. It was there when a child scraped their knee and cried into the water. It was there when first crushes bloomed in shy smiles and wet hand-holding. It was there when arguments erupted over rules and who won which game, then vanished like foam. For a few moments they lived without time. No one called them back. No one asked for silence. The world was theirs. Even the elders, watching from the trees, did not interrupt. They smiled in secret, remembering their own river days, their own crowns, their own skips, their own summer games. For some magic, though simple, never fades. Later, when shadows grew longer and the air began to cool, the play slowed. Children huddled together to dry, letting the sun kiss their skin. Some braided each other's hair. Others poked sticks into the fireflies that had just begun to glow at the edge of the reeds. The world, now golden and sleepy, felt full, not just with the echo of laughter, but with something deeper, something ancient, something true. Because long before there were books, there was the river. Long before there were maps, there were memories made beside it. And long before names, there were friendships carved in water. As the last child stood at the edge and dipped their toes one final time, a breeze passed over the surface. It rippled outwards in rings, a small goodbye. The river would still be there tomorrow, but today it had been theirs. And in their laughter, in their muddy hands, in their sunburnt shoulders and wet braids, the Stone Age remembered how to smile. Lessons in bone and flame. Before the child is taught to speak in words, they are taught to speak in gestures. Before they read symbols carved into cave walls, they read the grain of wood and the crack of stone. In the camp, learning is not a separate thing, it is life itself, breathed into the marrow of every day. The morning begins with smoke thin, grey fingers rising from the hearth, twirling like dancers before the full heat of flame catches. An elder crouches by the fire, coaxing it to life with patient breaths. The child watches, eyes wide, mouth still. Learning begins not with questions, but with silence. "Come closer," says the elder, whose voice is as textured as dried hide. The child inches near. A pile of bones rests nearby, long and smooth and stripped clean by time and teeth. The elder picks one up, turning it between gnarled fingers. "This was a deer," they say, "and now it will become something else." A knife flint-edged and honed by repetition appears. With small, slow cuts, the elder carves into the bone. Scrape, peel, score. Each motion is deliberate, as though the hand remembers something the mind has long forgotten. The child leans forward, heartbeat drumming in rhythm with each slice. You try. Hesitation flickers across the child's face like a cloud over the sun. But small hands reach forward. The bone is cool, the knife heavier than expected. They begin, awkward, tentative. The edge slips once a shallow nick blooms red on a finger. The elder does not flinch. "Good," they nod. "That is the bone greeting you." A strip of sinew becomes thread. The bone, now hollowed and honed, becomes a needle. Tiny, perfect. A tool made by hand, made with pain, care and instruction. The child does not yet realize they have crossed a threshold from watcher to maker. Later the sun rises higher. Shadows shorten, and the child follows the sound of rhythms, clink, crack, clack, toward the edge of the camp where stones are transformed. A man kneels beneath a tree surrounded by flakes of obsidian and river rock. He holds one stone in each hand and strikes them together not with force, but with knowledge. A sharp flake snaps off. He holds it up to the light. "Edges speak," he says, voice low. A good edge cuts with a whisper. He hands it to the child. The flake is jagged, deadly, beautiful. It glints like water at sunrise. The child places it beside the bone needle, their collection of knowledge beginning to take shape. Then, the fire lesson. The child is taken away from the others into a hollow between two fallen trees. Here, flame is not just warmth, it is survival. It is story. It is sacred. 2 sticks, a bowstring, dry grass, and breath. Fire lives in the belly of the wood, whispers the elder woman, her eyes catching the light like flint sparks. But it will not come for anyone. You must earn it. The child holds the bow, places the spindle upright. The elder guides their hands, wrapping fingers around the bowstring, pulling, pushing a soaring motion that begins slow and ends in sweat. Smoke. Then a hiss. Then a glow orange, then gold. And the flame is born. It is a tiny thing no bigger than a firefly, but the child gasps as though the sun itself had kissed their hands. The elder cups the flame into the nest of dried grass, coaxes it into life. Soon a small fire crackles. The child stares into it, wide-eyed. Now, the elder says, you carry the sun in your hands. That night around the fire, the tools are passed from hand to hand, the needle, the flake, the first coal caught by the child's own fingers. No one claps, no one sings. But the glances say everything. You are learning. You are becoming. You're no longer just part of the tribe, you're part of its memory. Later, the child sits beside their mother, stitching hide with the very needle they helped carve. The stitch is crooked, uneven, a knot forms where it should not. The child frowns. Every mistake leaves a mark, the mother murmurs, but even bad stitches hold cloth together. The fire flickers. The stars blink into existence one by one. And somewhere, inside the child's heart, a quiet pride grows. They did not just watch today. They made. They failed. They learned. In the Stone Age there are no schools, but the world itself teaches. And tonight the child sleeps with fingers sore and spirit alight, knowing tomorrow brings more bones, more flame, more lessons. And each scar, each ember is a step on the path to becoming. The Red Earth Ritual. Before memory had shape and before prayer had language, there was the Red Earth. It slept beneath the feet of the tribe, waiting for midsummer when the sun crowned the world in gold, and the ancestors were said to walk the wind again. This was not a story told. This was a rhythm remembered. The morning of the ritual began like any other. Quiet, breath held, stretched thin with expectation. The air was heavy with summer's breath, and even the birdsong held its tongue as if nature too was listening. The child awoke in a hush. The camp had not yet stirred into chatter or clatter. No flint struck. No fire crackled. The world waited. From the shadowed interior of the tent, the child watched light pour slowly through the air cracks, a golden syrup filling the world with promise. Their heartbeat felt different today. Slower, louder, as if it no longer belonged just to them. Then came the low drumbeat. Not from an instrument, but from hands, palms on stretched hides, thighs slapped in rhythm, footfalls on packed earth. It began in the east side of the camp where the women ground pigment. It spread to the fire circle where the elders hummed through half-closed lips. By the time the child stepped outside, the whole camp was pulsing. Ochre was life. Ochre was blood remembered. A bowl sat waiting near the fire, filled with crushed red earth, dark as dried berries, mixed with grease and ash. One of the elders, face lined like a riverbed, dipped their fingers into the paste and called the child forward. There were no words, only a nod and a fingertip, warm and rough, pressing pigment to cheek, brow and chest. A symbol not drawn, but felt. Circles for the sun, stripes for strength, a dot where the heartbeat lived. The child blinked slowly. They felt taller, heavier, brighter. And so began the dance, It wasn't a performance, it was an unlocking. The women circled in one direction, arms out like wings. The men stamped in rhythm, knees high, hands flung skyward. Children spun and shouted and copied and laughed, until little by little their joy melted into something older. Their shouts turned to chants, their spinning became invocation. The child danced too, not for show, not to please, but because the fire inside them had found its echo. Smoke rose in columns fragrant, twirling from fires fed with sage, sweetgrass, pine needles, and bark soaked in oil. Its scent clung to skin, hair, and soul. This, the elder whispered later, was how the spirits found them. They followed the smoke trail like wolves to meat, like birds to warmth. At the centre of the camp stood a figure cloaked in feathers and fur, face hidden by a mask carved from bone. The child had never seen this mask before. They had heard of it, in whispers near the fire, in songs sung to the moon, the mask of the Dawn Walker. It was not worn every year, only when the omens were right, only when the dreams said so. The masked figure raised both arms. Silence fell like snow. In that stillness the child felt their own breath leave them. They felt the weight of all who had danced before them, the ancestors who slept in hills, whose bones were cradled in caves, whose names were lost but whose stories lived in movement. The figure sang, not in words, in sounds older than speech, a low, spiralling hum that curved through the ribs and stirred the stomach. The tribe knelt, the child too. The figure walked among them, placing feathers on shoulders, tapping each brow with a twig of pine, whispering something that was not quite a blessing, not quite a warning. When they reached the child, they paused. The mask tilted just slightly, and then a touch to the chest. Right above the red dot where the heartbeat lived, a spark lit in the child, a flash, a flicker of fire not seen but felt. Then the figure moved on. This was the child's first ritual, and though they had danced in games, laughed in song, painted with ochre before this felt different, here they were not pretending, they were participating, becoming. That night the camp feasted, berries mashed with honey, fish roasted over coals, roots wrapped in leaves and buried in embers. The child sat between their mother and a cousin, face streaked in dried pigment, belly full, head spinning. Overhead the stars blinked awake one by one, slow and deliberate. They did not twinkle, they watched. And in their glow the child wondered, had their ancestors danced beneath these very stars? Had those same drums once echoed through a different valley, with different voices yet the same spirit? Their eyes grew heavy, but before sleep claimed them, they whispered to no one and to everything. I danced. I burned. I was seen. And the fire cracked, and the drums faded, and the red earth waited for another summer. When the spirits whisper. The fire has long gone to embers. The coals glow faintly under the ash, like forgotten suns buried beneath grey clouds. Outside the hide-covered tent, the night hums, soft, breathing alive. Crickets chirp their ancient songs, the wind sighs through the grass, and the child sleeps, but not deeply. The sleep of a child in the Stone Age is not like sleep of today. It is not silenced by walls, it is not fenced in by doors, it is not dulled by machines, it is wild, open, thin-skinned, and the dreams that come through it do not knock. They enter. In the dream the world is silver, not dark, not light, just a shimmering in between. The trees do not cast shadows, the river makes no sound. Time is as soft as the air and everything feels paused, except for the wolves. They come first as eyes, amber, wide, blinking slow in the mist. Then they step forward, pause not making a sound. One, then two, then many. A pack, circling yet gentle. Not hunters, not threats, but not pets either. They're something else. The largest of them, grey-backed, eyes like old moonlight, sits before the child and speaks, not in words, in knowing. "You have begun to hear," the wolf says without a mouth. "You will forget this voice by morning, but it will still live in your bones." The child wants to ask what voice, and hear what, but before a thought can form, the sky above cracks, not with thunder, but with stars. The stars are moving, shifting, drawing pictures in their glow. A fish leaps across constellations. A tree grows from a cluster of white fire. A hand, massive and soft, reaches down from the sky, not to grab, but to bless. And then, from behind the stars, a figure appears, vague, smoky and tall, cloaked in something like breath. A face that keeps changing, first grandmother, then father, then no one the child knows, an ancestor perhaps, or many ancestors sharing a shape. "We live behind your eyes," the figure says. "We are the voice you hear in silence. We are the warmth you feel when alone." The child's heart beats faster, but not in fear. In recognition something has shifted. A door has opened, or perhaps a veil has fallen. And then, just as suddenly, the dream collapses inward, like a bird folding its wings. The wolves fade. The stars blink out. The ancestor dissolves into smoke. And the child wakes, not with a start, not with a scream, but with wide, unblinking eyes. The world is still dark. The fire is still low. The tent still smells of hide and ash and skin. But something is different. The child sits up, rubbing nothing from their face, listening to nothing in the air, and yet knowing they are not alone. They crawl to the flap of the tent and peek outside. Night has not left, but it is thinning. The eastern sky is faintly bruised with colour. The wind is gentle. The world feels held. In the silence, the child does not move. They sit. They remember nothing from the dream. No wolf, no stars, no voice, no figure, not even a feeling. But there is a weight inside them now, a warm stone resting behind their ribs. It is not fear. It is not joy. It is knowing. Later that day, while playing with sticks, the child finds themselves drawing a pattern in the dirt, 2 arcs and a circle. They don't know why. They don't know what it means, but it feels right. Their sister sees the drawing and tilts her head. "What is it?" The child shrugs. "Just something I saw, I think." "In a dream?" The child frowns, not remembering, not forgetting. Maybe. That night the elder tells stories by the fire, not of animals or weather, but of dreams. He speaks of the whisperers, spirits who visit only in sleep, who wear the skins of animals, who speak in symbols, who plant seeds in minds and then vanish, leaving only silence behind. He says some people are dream walkers, not special, not chosen, just sensitive, more open to the in-between, more likely to remember things they never saw. The child doesn't ask any questions. But as the flames dance in the elder's eyes, something shifts again inside them. A tiny knot loosens. A door creaks open. A whisper they didn't know they were holding their breath to hear is heard. That night, before sleep takes them, the child looks up at the stars. And for a moment, just a moment, they feel watched. Not by eyes, but by presence, by something vast, soft and familiar. And then they sleep, and the dreams return, but this time they enter awake. The stranger clan. The wind changed first, not its weight nor its scent, but its story. It no longer told only of deer moving through reeds or clouds crowding the horizon. It whispered of footsteps not yet heard, of smoke that did not belong to the clan's hearth. The dogs knew before the adults. They stood stiff by the edge of the camp, tails lifted like spears, ears twitching. One barked, then 2, a rising chorus that snapped every gaze toward the southern trees. The child stood near the ash pit, a burnt stick in hand, still warm from drawing looping patterns in the dirt. They paused. Something was coming. Footsteps in the unfamiliar rhythm. Not the light pitter of squirrels, not the thump of their uncle's heavy walk. This was new, measured, wary, like watchers who didn't want to be seen. And then figures. At first only shapes between trees, then faces, bodies, painted with different marks, their hair braided in ways never seen before. They wore beads of stone the colour of moonlight, and one carried a drum made from something that looked like bark and bone. Strangers. The camp paused. Even the fire seemed to still. One of the elders stood slowly, placing down their carving blade as if even that was too sharp a message. The air was thick, not with fear, but with memory. Every adult in the clan had stories of first meetings, some that ended in gifts, others in blood. Today had not yet decided. But then a smile. Not wide, just enough. The leader of the strangers raised a hand, flat and open, no weapon, just greeting. A slow, cautious step forward. One pace, then another. The elder mirrored it. One step, then two. And just like that, two clans stood within breathing distance, two tongues, one silence. Then fire. Not flames of war, but a shared fire lit between them, a gesture, a truce, an invitation. Both clans circled the new hearth, space left between them like a river no one had yet dared to cross. They spoke or tried. Words did not match, but hands did. Gestures told stories where voices stumbled, a held-out shell, a carved animal, a laugh. The child watched from behind their mother's shoulder. Their heart beat loud, fast. They had never seen so many faces they didn't know. Some of the strangers had red clay in their hair. Some had beads made from fish bones. One woman had lines tattooed across her jaw like the ripples of the river. Then eyes met. A child. Their age. Across the fire. The stranger child had dark eyes, sharp, curious. They held a woven pouch in one hand and a flat round stone in the other. For a long moment neither moved, just stared. Then a smile. Small, but real. And without thinking, the child smiled back. Two sparks in the forest night. It took only minutes before the first game began. It needed no shared words, just laughter, chasing, dodging. Stones were tossed. Feet splashed in water. The stranger child showed how their pouch opened into a net perfect for catching frogs. The clan's child showed how to make whistling sounds using a blade of grass. Laughter became the first common language. The adults still spoke carefully, but the children had already run across the invisible bridge between tribes. They were skipping stones while the sun lowered its golden crown. Later, gifts were exchanged. The strangers gave fish wrapped in broad leaves. The clan offered carved flint tips. Necklaces changed hands. A clay figure of a bear passed from one child to another, a silent pact, a soft promise. That night the fire burned higher than usual. Shadows danced across tents and faces. The drums from the stranger clan played slow, rhythmic thumps that made the earth feel alive under bare feet. One of the clan's storytellers answered with a flute just a bone, hollowed and wise. The songs did not share words, but they met in the middle. Different rhythms, one dance. The child sat close to their new friend. They didn't know their name, but they had played, laughed, sat in silence watching the stars. And in that silence the child realized something new. Not everyone smells the same. Not everyone walks the same. But warmth feels the same on every skin. And hunger sounds the same in every belly. And fire makes every face glow. The child pointed up at a star and whispered its name. The stranger child followed the finger, then pointed at another and whispered a different name. Two names for the same light. The child laughed. So did the other. Because they both understood, the stars don't care what name you call them, they shine anyway. The world was larger now. Before today, the child thought the forest ended just past the river, that all voices sounded like their mother's, that all dances swayed to the same drum beat. But now the world had doubled. It had new songs, new faces, new games. The clans would part by sunrise, that was understood. Strangers cannot stay strangers forever, nor can they stay too long. But the child knew something had changed. Inside their chest, where memories live, a door had opened. The idea of the other was no longer frightening. It was fascinating. And in dreams that night the fire burned on with the both clans still sitting side by side. The children ran through forests that stretched beyond the horizon, pointing at stars they had just begun to name together. Different tongues, same fire. And the child slept smiling. Because now they knew the world had more faces than they could count, and each one held story waiting to be heard. The hunt begins. The morning is breathless. Even the wind dares not move. Mist lies across the earth like a soft animal hide, and somewhere beneath it feet stir. Quiet feet. Bare feet. Feet trained to feel the rhythm of the soil, not disturb it. Feet that do not belong to children. Not usually. But today the child is among them. Older now, not yet a hunter, not yet a man or woman, but no longer only a shadow among games and laughter. Today they are invited to follow, not to play, not to ask, but to learn, to listen, to become. They rise before the sun, in a camp still hushed from sleep, guided by a whisper in a hand, the uncle with the long scar, the one who never speaks unless it matters. He says nothing even now, just nods, and the child follows. There is no fire this morning, no barking dogs, no crackling reeds beneath feet. Everything is softness, caution, reverence. Even the birds know. The forest is not a place of stories today. It is a place of stillness. And the child begins to understand. The first step into shadow. To hunt is not to chase, it is to disappear. The hunters move like smoke, not disturbing, not announcing, only becoming part of the world that forgets humans exist. They pass under low branches, over silent stones. One slips a hand into river mud, smears it on his skin. The child does the same. Cool, wet, hiding scent. The blood of the earth becomes their mask. A branch snaps under the child's heel. All heads turn, not with anger but with silence sharper than any scolding. The lesson is wordless. The message, there is no room for error. Not out here. 2. The language of trees and breath. They wait. Not to move, but to become. One hunter crouches and places his ear to the ground. Another tastes the wind with parted lips. Their senses are tools sharper than flint. The child watches, wide-eyed, mimicking. Every leaf has a whisper. Every twig has a tale. A scratch on bark. Deer passed in the night. Birdsong pausing. Something larger stirs. The hunters read the forest like the elders read bones or stars with reverence, not ownership. 3. A glimpse of the sacred. They find the tracks near a bend in the river fresh, soft, still breathing with warmth. Deer. Not many, 3, maybe 4. A mother and yearlings, the uncle signs with 2 fingers and a nod. Not prey, not targets. Offerings. The child feels it now, the shift. This is not sport, not conquest. It is a conversation with the land, and one must speak carefully. Ask, not demand, and give thanks no matter the answer. They move again, slower, lower, eyes ahead, breath inside, hearts wrapped in patience. Ivor, the moment between heartbeats, and then, there they are. Brown bodies against green ferns, half shielded by morning mist. The deer graze without fear, ears flicking, hooves dainty upon the moss. They do not yet know they've been chosen. The child wants to gasp, to point, to say, "Look!" But silence holds their throat like a parent's firm hand. This moment is too sacred for noise. The lead hunter notches an arrow, another grips a spear. Time slows. Even the river forgets to flow. And then, a sound not human, a bird's cry in a certain pattern, a signal. 3 hunters rise from the opposite bank like ghosts from fog. The deer startle, but it is too late. A twang, a rush, a thud. One deer falls. The others vanish like wind-scattered smoke. The child does not cheer. No one does. The hunt is not joy. The hunt is balance. The first touch of death. The child is guided to the fallen deer. It lies still, its eyes open, its body warm. The uncle kneels beside it, places a hand over its heart, whispers something, a language older than words. Thanks, perhaps, or apology, or both. Then he turns to the child. Nods. The child kneels. One hand, trembling, reaches out and touches the fur. It is soft, alive, still. And then the tears come, not loud, not ashamed, just quiet rivers sliding down cheeks. The hunters do not mock, they only nod. You understand, one finally says. Good. 6. The sharing of the kill. The journey home is heavier. Not because of weight, but because of meaning. The deer is carried between 2. Its blood stains arms and legs. The child walks behind, quiet, still weeping. And yet, beneath the sorrow, something new stirs. Pride. Not the kind shouted in games or boasted over feats. A quieter pride, sacred, heavy. The kind that comes from doing what is needed, not what is wanted. Back at camp, the news arrives before they do. The women are ready, fires relit, stones heated. Children hush their games. This is no ordinary return. The deer is laid before the elders. Each part will go to a purpose, nothing wasted. The hide for warmth, the sinew for string, the bones for tools, the meat for all, the heart for memory, and the child watches every moment, learns not just how to take, but how to give back. 7. The flame and the future. That night they sit around the fire. The child is given a small piece of liver bitter, rich, a hunter's portion. It is not delicious, but it is sacred. They eat in silence. Then the stories begin. Not the child's, not yet, but the stories of other hunts, other winters, other deer, the ones that escaped, the ones that led hunters into rivers, the one that was a spirit in disguise. Each tale has a lesson hidden like marrow in bone. The child listens, stomach full, eyes heavy, mind burning. And in the flickering flame they see the future. A time when their own hands will hold the spear, when their own breath will hush the trees, when they will rise before dawn, not to follow, but to lead. But for now, they sleep, wrapped in the scent of ash and earth and blood, dreaming of hooves in mist and silence between heartbeats. To hunt is not to kill. It is to become part of the rhythm, and today the child took their first step into that ancient song, not with a weapon, but with understanding. And that is the beginning of everything. Firelight stories. The stars blink in the ink of the sky, silent watchers above the circle of orange glow. The fire dances with a wild grace, sending shadows scurrying across fur-lined cloaks and worn stone tools. Embers drift like fireflies, vanishing before they land. The camp is quiet now. The tools have been cleaned, the meat has been eaten, the dogs lie curled near warm feet, and in the hush that follows a day's labour, the old voices begin to rise. The child sits nestled between legs, their small back resting against a mother's chest. A thick fur is wrapped around both of them, its scent of ash and old blood strangely comforting. The child's eyes are wide and bright, reflecting every flicker of flame. Tonight there will be stories, and stories are sacred. An elder leans forward, his hands like old roots, his face carved deep by time and wind. His voice is not loud, it doesn't need to be. The fire carries it, crackling in rhythm with each word, each pause. His eyes shine with memory, but they look somewhere else into the fire, into the past, into the bones of the earth. There was once a beast so tall it could bite the moon, he says. It came when the ice was thick, when even the rivers groaned in their sleep. Its breath was fog, its eyes were twin suns, and only the bravest of the old ones dared to stand before it. The child listens, heartbeat quickening. Around them, others lean in too, not just the children, even the hunters and mothers, even the ones with grey in their hair, because this moment belongs to all of them. This is not entertainment. This is memory. This is how the dead speak, how the past lives, how the tribe knows itself. Another voice joins in a woman's this time, her tone soft and lilting. She speaks of a girl who turned into a bird to escape a flood, and of how the river still sings her name. She gestures to the stars above them, tracing constellations with her fingers. That one there, she says that is the grandmother's bowl, and those stars, they're her lost children following behind. The child's eyes follow her finger, straining to see the story in the sky. They can almost make it out, the curved dip of the bowl, the trail of light behind it. The stars are not just stars now. They are people, spirits, relatives, names to be whispered, not counted. The fire cracks again, sending a burst of sparks upward like a spell cast into the heavens. A younger man takes his turn. His voice is sharper, more animated. He speaks of the time a bear came into camp, not a bear of fur and claw, but a bear made of smoke, of hunger, of magic. He tells how the clan fought it with dreams and drums, and how its spirit was trapped inside the very drum he now holds. He beats it once, a low, deep thump that vibrates in every chest. The dogs stir, the children gasp, the fire flares as if awakened. The child clutches their mother's arm tighter. They feel the beat in their ribs. They are both afraid and alive, and they do not look away. Another tale comes, and another. Some are warnings of those who broke taboos and vanished into fog. Some are teachings how fire was stolen from the mountain, how the first tools were shaped by watching birds crack shellfish on stone. Some are memories of migrations, of great storms, of times when the sky rained ash. Each story adds a layer, to the child's understanding, to the tribe's shared skin. In the flickering light, faces become masks, shadows stretch and shrink, time becomes strange. The elder who speaks now could be the same one who spoke 100 winters ago. The child begins to feel as if they have always sat here, always listened, always carried these stories in their blood, because maybe they have. Maybe stories are older than names, older than fire. Maybe stories were the first fire, the first warmth passed from mouth to ear, the first light in the dark. The wind picks up slightly, rattling bones strung on leather, whispering through the hollow reeds tied at the shelter's edge. It sounds like voices. The spirits are listening too. The child thinks of the stories they've heard tonight, of the girl bird, the ice beast, the star children. They do not question if they are real. Real is not the point. These stories are more than real. They are necessary. The child's eyes begin to grow heavy, but they resist. They want to hear it all, to remember, to carry these words inside them like embers they'll one day pass on. Across the fire, another child sits with eyes just as wide. It's the child from the stranger clan, the one who arrived moons ago with different words, different scents, different skin. But now their face is lit by the same fire. Now their eyes are filled with the same giants, the same stars, the same magic. Stories have a way of making strangers familiar. The night deepens, the fire shrinks. One by one the stories wind down. The elders' final words drift into silence like smoke disappearing into sky. The child rests their head against their mother's arm, warm and full and quiet. The stars above do not speak, but they do not need to. Their light is a kind of story too. A promise, maybe. That even when the fire dies, something remains. The storm and the tree. There are nights when the world forgets to be gentle. Nights when the sky no longer watches quietly, and the wind stops humming lullabies through the grass. Nights when the forest closes its throat, and everything with breath lowers itself to the ground. The storm didn't arrive. It attacked. First came the hush, unnatural, unsettling, a stillness that coated every branch like sap. Birdsong vanished. Insect rhythm halted. Even the fire, earlier dancing and cheerful, seemed to cower in its own smoke. The child looked up. The clouds were gathering like wolves, heavy, black, layered deep, a great weight pressing down upon the dome of the world. It began with one breath of wind, then another. Not playful gusts, but something deeper. Wind that prowled, wind that searched. It moved through the tall grass like a stalking thing. The old ones rose from their seated positions. No words, just glances. A knowing passed between them like a shared heartbeat. The child was scooped up by their mother, not harshly, but with urgency carved into every motion. Belongings were grabbed, embers were kicked out. The fire hissed its protest, but it too knew the storm's voice. Then the thunder spoke. Not a distant grumble, not a polite warning. It was a crack that split the air like bone under pressure. It echoed off stone and cliff and spirit. Even the earth flinched. The sky opened. Rain did not fall, it slammed each droplet a nail, each gust a shout. Mud was instant, rising to ankles, grabbing at the tribe's feet like desperate hands. They ran, not in panic, but in practiced haste. They had faced storms before, but each storm is new. Each one has its own teeth. Shelter was known a low cave beneath the ridge, its mouth hidden by a curtain of vines and old rock. But before they reached it, the tree intervened. It stood tall in the centre of a clearing, a great one, ancient and wide, its trunk a column of memories. It had seen seasons come and die. It had whispered to the wind and listened to the stars. It was not a tree. It was a witness. The child had always loved it, climbed its arms, slept beneath its shade, offered berries to its roots in playful ceremony. The tree was friend, shelter, sentinel. And then the lightning came. There was no warning, no flare in the sky, no signal, just a blinding flash and a sound that tore reality in half. The tree screamed. Not in words, but in wood and fire and smoke. Its heart exploded, outward shards flew like arrows. A red glow etched across the child's vision, and then silence. A silence deeper than night. A silence that felt wrong. Then the tree was gone. Or rather, it remained split, sundered, steaming. Its crown lay crooked, its core exposed like bone. The air reeked of ash and ozone. The child had fallen, mud-caked, wide-eyed, throat closed. Their mother pulled them upright, but they didn't feel their feet. Only the drumbeat in their chest. Only the echo in their bones. Later, under the rock of safety, as the rain still howled outside like a thing enraged, the elders said nothing. They did not console. They did not explain. They simply listened to the storm's fury and to the silence left by the tree. The child trembled, not from cold, not from pain, but from understanding. Something deep had shifted. They had played beside that tree, dreamed beneath its branches, spoken secrets to its bark, and in one moment the sky had ended it. That night sleep was not gentle. Dreams came loud and vivid. The tree walked, Its roots were legs trailing soil and ash. It held a burning branch like a torch. It wept fire and spoke in thunderclaps. "You saw me die," it said, "and you lived. Now carry me." The child woke to Rain's final whimpers. By dawn the storm was spent, the forest exhaled. Birdsong returned cautiously, hesitantly. The world was bright again, but different. They went back. The tribe returned to the clearing, not as playmates, not as wanderers, but as mourners. The tree still stood broken, wounded, blackened. Steam rose from its insides. It would not live another season. The child walked toward it, alone. They reached out their small hand placed on the charred trunk. Warm, still warm. They closed their eyes. No words, just breath, just reverence. Others came forward silently. One placed a shell at the base. Another tied a bit of sinew to a low branch. Offerings. Farewell. Memory. The child stayed behind as the tribe turned away. Something inside them had hardened. Not in bitterness, but in knowing. Storms do not knock. They enter, and sometimes they take. But from that taking comes a truth. Everything stands until it does not. Everything breathes until it breaks. And still we remember. That night beside the new fire, the child spoke for the first time. Not a myth, not a fable, but a truth about a tree, about a storm, about fear and the strength it leaves behind. And in the faces around the fire, faces old and worn, young and wide-eyed, they saw something stir. They were becoming the story keeper. The storm had knocked, but something had answered. And it would never forget how loud the sky could scream. The wounded bird. It began with a sound. Not thunder, not footsteps, not wind. A different sound, soft, sharp, sudden. A cry, not human, but pain knows no language. The child was crouched by the elderberry thicket, gathering berries with stained fingers and a fur-wrapped satchel. The midday sun was warm, the air sleepy. Bees hummed their golden chorus, and the world had a rhythm, steady, predictable. Then came the cry, thin, frayed, fragile as breath in winter. The child froze, head tilted, listened. There it was again, a tremble in the reeds, a plea wrapped in feathers. The child pushed through the brush, each step uncertain, and there crumpled in a patch of broken grass was the bird, small, shivering, one wing twisted at an impossible angle. It looked up, not with fear, but with resignation. Its eyes were black and endless, a tiny mirror of sky. The child had seen many birds before, swift ones that darted between trees, proud ones that sang from the cliff's edge. But never like this, never broken. The child knelt, breath held, fingers reached hesitant, and paused. The bird did not flinch, it simply watched. The child lifted it gently, cupping it in both hands. Its bones were like hollow reeds, its heartbeat a stuttering drum. It weighed less than a promise. But the weight it carried was something else. The child ran back to the camp, not with berries, but with a burden. Elders gathered around, curious, concerned. Some frowned. A bird that cannot fly is food for foxes. Others shrugged. Spirits take what they will. But one, the fire tender, the woman with eyes like smoke, knelt beside the child. "Show me," she said. Together they examined the wing. It was not torn, just wrong, bent where it should arc, folded where it should stretch. The fire tender made a paste of pine resin and crushed yarrow. She split a reed, bound the wing, wrapped the bird in softened hide and laid it in a shallow basket lined with moss. "There is pain," she whispered, "but also breath. That means there is still a chance." The child nodded, sat beside the basket and waited. Days passed. The bird did not sing, but it blinked, a small rhythm of defiance. The child brought it worms, ground seeds, drops of water, fed it with fingers patient as rain, kept the fire lit through cold nights, watched frost kiss the edges of the basket, then melt by morning. There were no grand rewards, no signs from the stars, just small things, a lifted head, steadier breath, single note, broken and hoarse, like the first word of a forgotten language. Others watched from a distance, some scoffed. "It will die anyway." Some smiled, and none stayed. Only the child returned again and again, wiping drool from its beak, replacing moss, reapplying balm. The child did not speak to it, not often, but sometimes, in the hush of dusk. "You're not alone." The bird never replied, but it listened. You could feel it. One morning the fire tender came and watched in silence. Then she spoke softly. "To heal is to wait without expecting." The child nodded, though they weren't sure what it meant. Later that day a feather fell from the bird's side. Not ragged, not torn, clean, smooth, new. The child picked it up, held it to the light. It shimmered like dusk on water, hope shaped like a sliver. Weeks blurred, the seasons shifted, leaves reddened at the edges. And one morning, without warning, the bird stood, not a hop, not a flutter, but a stand. Its legs shook, but it was upright. The child gasped, called for the fire tender. They came, watched and nodded. "It is time." The child carried the basket beyond the camp, past the elderberry thicket, to a hill where the wind spoke first. The sky was wide, open, waiting. The child opened the basket. The bird did not leap. It waited, met the child's eyes, then slowly, carefully flapped. Once, twice. It rose, not high, but enough. Enough to lift from the earth, to kiss the wind, to say, "I remember." It circled once, a small spiral of thank yous, then disappeared into the trees. The child stood there for a long time. The wind combed their hair. The basket, now empty, felt full, not of weight, but meaning. They turned back, walked home. And that night, under the firelight, while stories curled around the flames, the child added one, a new story, of a bird that fell and flew again. The elders listened, some smiled. The fire tender said nothing, but her eyes were soft. And the child slept that night not as one who saved, but as one who understood. Not everything lives, not everything heals, but sometimes, when care is louder than doubt, when patience is stronger than fear, when a small hand chooses to reach a wing mends, a life continues, and a child grows. To heal is to hope is to love, and love in this cold and wild world is the most ancient fire. The first blood. It began with a fall, not a mighty leap, not a great hunt, just a stumble on a sun-warmed slope where stones hid beneath the tall grass. The child had run too fast, chased a shadow, a trick of the wind, a lizard perhaps, or the echo of a friend's laughter. Feet outpaced thought. Then earth, sky, the crunch of gravel, a moment unmade, and then stillness, pierced by breath. They rolled to their side slowly, uncertain what had just happened. Dust clung to their lips, their elbows. One palm burned from impact, but it was the knee that stole attention. Torn open skin peeled like bark from a tree. Blood welled, dark and thick and immediate. It spilled down the leg like paint drawn by gravity's brush. There was no scream, only a stunned silence, a quiet heartbeat of disbelief. Then the pain arrived, not as a roar, but as a throb steady, sure, ancient. They had bled before, scratches from brambles, the prick of a thorn. But this was different. This was deeper, more visible. This blood spoke. It meant something. A figure approached an older cousin. They crouched, said nothing, only inspected the wound. No mockery, no panic, just a shared recognition, a nod, a soft grunt. Then they stood and called for an elder. The child sat in the grass as the pain grew teeth, but beneath it was something stranger, a sense of pride. This, they thought, must be what growing feels like. The elder came with herbs and cloth. She did not scold nor coddle. She sat cross-legged beside the child and began to clean the wound, humming low and steady. Her hands were practiced, the water cold, the pain sharp, the song almost louder than the pain. "This is your first?" she asked, voice soft as smoke. The child nodded. She smiled, not with lips, but with the lines beside her eyes. "You'll have more," she said. "The body remembers each one." That night the child limped back to the fire circle, leg wrapped, bandage darkened with medicine and still bleeding history. Eyes met theirs the others had heard. No teasing, only acknowledgement, a quiet inclusion. Another child leaned close, pointed to a faint scar on their forearm. "This one was from climbing the fig tree," they whispered. "A branch snapped." Another spoke up. "Mine came during the spring flood, sharp stone in the stream." And another bore tusk, only a graze, but it bled for a whole sun. The stories piled like stones around the fire, not of battles or glory, but of first blood, of quiet pain, of survival and lessons learned. Scars were not shame, they were stories, markings of lived moments. Not all would be seen, but all would be felt. The child looked down at the bandage. It pulsed with warmth, not just from pain, but from meaning. In the days that followed, the wound began to crust. The redness faded to bruise, the cut to a scab, but something had shifted within. They moved more carefully now, but not fearfully. They watched where feet landed, listened to the wind differently. They asked questions about healing, about herbs, about the names of bones. They were not afraid of pain, they were curious about it. And when the cousin who'd helped first fell later that week twisted ankle, nothing broken, the child fetched cool water without being asked, tore a strip of cloth from their own tunic, applied it clumsily but with care, mimicking the elder's hum. They had learned, not just how it hurt, but how it healed. One evening the elder called the child aside. She sat them beneath the stone tree, the one scarred by generations of carvings, marks of birth, marks of death, marks of stories no longer told aloud. She held out a piece of bone, carved, smooth, a talisman. "For the first," she said. The child looked at her unsure. "Every first blood deserves a memory," she explained. "This one's yours, not to wear to remember." The bone was warm from her palm, etched with lines that spiraled, a mark of injury, perhaps, or a maze, or both. The child took it and nodded. They understood. That night the dream came. They stood in a forest where all the trees were wounded, split bark, gashes, knots like bruises, but each one lived, tall, towering, not broken, formed by the pain. And in the clearing a pool of red light. Not blood, not fire, something older, something alive. It pulsed in rhythm with their own chest. A voice whispered not in words, but in feeling. "You are becoming." The child woke and touched their knee. Still sore, still healing, still theirs. And the world felt different, not safer, not softer, but clearer. They had met pain and survived it. They had learned its name, and they had found in it not weakness but entry. Entry into the long, winding path of becoming. Into the silent agreement all living things make with the earth. I will break and I will mend, and in that cycle I will belong. That morning the child did not run wildly. They walked, steady, certain, a little slower, a little wiser. And if the path ahead still held stones, they welcomed them. They were ready now. They had bled, and the earth had answered back. Farewell to the guest. The wind had shifted. It came not with storm or fury, but with a hush, as if the forest itself had drawn breath in preparation for a goodbye. Branches no longer swayed in rhythm with laughter. The air no longer carried the smoke of shared meals and mingled songs. Even the fire crackled more softly now, not with the playful hiss of green wood, but with the tired sigh of embers burning low. The visiting clan was leaving. No horn was blown, no grand ritual declared it. But the signs were clear. The woven mats that had once carpeted the centre of the camp were rolled, pots scraped clean, furs folded and bound, feet moved with quiet purpose, not the wandering curiosity of guests, but the steady gait of those who knew they had far to walk. The songs that once rose like birds into the dusk had dwindled to murmurs. The child watched. Not hiding, not this time. The days of shyness had passed. He stood at the edge of the gathering, shoulders squared, heart a fist inside his chest. And across the clearing stood the other child, the guest, the foreign, the friend. She had hair the colour of river reeds in autumn, eyes that caught firelight and refused to let it go. When they had first met, he had been afraid of her. She had spoken with strange rhythm, had laughed too loud, had touched things in the wrong order. But wonder had overtaken fear, and soon they had traded not words, but stones, smooth ones, flat ones, carved ones. They had tossed them into the stream and watched the ripples chase one another across language. Now they stood facing each other, the distance between them both vast and small. She stepped forward first. Her hand reached into her pouch and drew forth a carved bone, a tiny wolf, no bigger than a thumb. The child knew it well. She'd shown him its snout, worn smooth by years of handling. It had once belonged to her mother, or maybe her mother's mother. It was meant to keep nightmares away. She placed it in his palm. Not a word passed between them, none was needed. And yet everything screamed inside him, a storm of words he had no shape for. Don't go, stay, come back. Why must this end? But even the sky above understood. Clouds passed over the sun, gently dimming the world, as if it too could not bear the brightness of this parting. He looked at her, really looked, committing to memory every fleck of ash in her hair, the small scar by her jaw, the way her feet never stood still for long. She was not like the others. She had brought questions, laughter, 1,000 strange thoughts. She had changed the shape of his days. Now her absence would do the same. He reached into the leather strap at his waist, pulled out the red feather. It was his, a gift from the hunter once, a trophy from a bird that had flown too fast. He had guarded it like treasure. Now he held it out. She hesitated, then took it, cradling it like fire. Somewhere behind them, the adults were finishing farewells. His mother embraced the woman with the sunburned cheeks. Warriors clasped arms, elders nodded. There were words exchanged, thanks given, promises made, though none could say if they'd ever meet again. The child did not understand the grown-up rituals. He understood only that something big was ending. When she turned to go, she did not look back. Not once. He watched her walk until the trees swallowed her whole. And only then did he feel it, the silence. Not the hush of the nightfall, but a hollow, yawning silence that echoed in the places she had filled. The space by the fire where she used to sit, the path they had raced down, the stone by the river where they had whispered things they didn't understand. He went to that stone. Alone now? The river ran on, indifferent. Birds sang unaware. Life moved forward, as it always did. But he sat with knees tucked beneath his chin and the wolf-bone clutched tight in his hand. It was small, this loss. No one had died. No battle had been fought. But still it hurt, like a splinter buried too deep to find. A quiet ache, a thinning of something he hadn't known was thick. That night the fire burned alone. No stories were told. And yet, in his mind, he saw her dancing shadow again, heard her strange musical laugh, remembered the way she had turned even mistakes into magic. His father came to sit beside him. He said nothing, only passed him a roasted root. They chewed in silence. Then, softly, the elder spoke. "Some fires," he said, "burn quickly and bright. Others smoulder. But the good ones, the real ones, they leave warmth in the stones long after the flames are gone." The child nodded. His fingers traced the carved ridges of the wolf bone. He wondered if she still held his feather, if she would remember his face, if one day they might meet again, perhaps as elders, or perhaps only in stories. He stood, finally, walked to the edge of the clearing. Above, the stars had returned, the same stars she had pointed at just nights ago, calling them by names he still couldn't pronounce. Now they were quiet, watching, patient. He whispered her name to them, not loudly, just enough for the wind to carry, and somehow that was enough. The fire may have burned down, but the memory of its light would not fade. Not yet. Not tonight. A name in the stone. The day was ordinary, sky cloudless, breeze soft. The sounds of the forest rustled as usual, bird wings flitting, insect songs in the grass, the occasional crack of a twig underfoot. But the child felt different. Not sick, not afraid, not lonely, just full, as if something inside them was reaching outward. They were not the youngest anymore. New children had been born, squirming in deer hides, crying their way into the world beside smoky fires. The child, not quite grown, not yet old, watched how others looked at them now, no longer simply small. There were expectations now. Words followed them like shadows. One day, soon, their turn. And with this came a weight, invisible but heavy, and a longing. It began with a question no one asked, but the child couldn't silence. What will remain of me? The tribe had stories, old ones, of hunters who ran so fast they outran storms, of mothers who sang to the moon and it listened, of a boy who fought a bear with nothing but a stick and came back limping but smiling, of a girl who could hear the trees speak when no one else could. But those were just sounds in the air. Stories passed from one mouth to another, growing and shifting like smoke. There was no proof, no faces, no hands. And then came the memory, faint but sharp, of a cave, not far, the one the elders warned children not to enter alone, not because of monsters, but because the roof was cracked and the air was damp and spirits didn't like being disturbed. But in that cave, there was something more. Symbols, scratches, marks older than any voice in the tribe, shapes drawn with charcoal and ochre, a bison with too many legs, a sun with a face, a handprint that looked like it belonged to no one yet belonged to everyone. The child had seen it once, held the elder's hand, asked what it meant. The elder only said they wanted to be remembered. That was enough. That night, when the fire had died down to whispers, and the others had curled like foxes in their bedding, the child stole away. No one saw them leave. The moon saw, the stars saw. That was enough. They walked through the dark, past the crooked tree and the river stone shaped like a sleeping bear. Their feet remembered the path. Their hands remembered how to part the leaves. The forest did not stop them. The wind did not warn. The cave waited. Inside, the silence was thick. It wrapped around the child like wet fur. Every step echoed louder than the last. The air smelled of time, old, earthy, with a whisper of smoke long gone. The walls were cold to the touch. There the drawings, faded, cracked, but still there. A spiral, a deer, a jagged shape like a storm, and the handprint. That ancient silent scream. I was here. The child reached into their pouch, pulled out a shard of stone, sharp, dark, broken from a bigger blade. Not sacred, just useful. They crouched low. They did not rush. There was no music, no voice guiding them, no vision from a dream. Just a need. Slowly they scraped. Not a picture, not a face, not a hand, but a shape. One only they understood. A mark made not to be admired, but to be known. The sound of carving was soft, like an animal breathing. Time did not move. The stars spun far above the rock, unaware of what was being born in the shadows. The child paused, ran their fingers over the groove. It wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. They sat back, looked at it, felt it. It was theirs. No one else would ever carve it quite like that. No one else needed to. It would stay. Long after the child had grown, long after their feet no longer ran through the grass, long after their name was no longer spoken at every meal, that symbol that scratched in stone would remain. And maybe, just maybe, one day, another child would come, see it, ask about it, feel something stir, and maybe no one would remember who made it. But that wasn't the point. The point was, someone did. The child stood up, wiped the dust from their hands, looked around once more, not afraid now, but full again. Full in a different way, a quiet pride, a silent echo. When they stepped out of the cave, the world looked the same, but they were not. They walked back slowly, letting the night hold them. The forest watched, the stars blinked, the wind carried no judgment, only leaves. When the camp came into view, smoke still rose from the embers. Someone shifted in their sleep. An owl called from a tree. The child curled beside their sibling, whose breath was steady, dreaming of berries or thunder or nothing at all. But the child now marked did not sleep immediately. The eyes stayed open a while longer, staring at the sky, not searching for answers, not praying, just remembering. And the stone miles away, cold and still, remembered them in return. The last day of summer. The sky had changed overnight. It still stretched wide and honest across the world, but the blue was thinner now, less fierce, more weathered, like it was holding its breath against an untold promise. The sun was slower, less impenetrable, as though it knew time had shifted and was lingering before the next act. The child woke to the sound of wings, not the usual dawn chorus, but a single clarion note, a low trumpeting of geese far above. The birds flew in formation, silent in their purpose, invisible to the naked eye, yet unmistakable in their meaning. Summer was ending. They sat by the fire pit, where embers lay cold and the ash had settled. It was as though a part of summer's heart had died, here in silence. The child touched the charred stones, remembering stories, laughter, ritual, and wandering firelight. Each stone had soaked in sunlight and smoke and now carried their memory in stubborn resistance to the coming chill. The air felt different, not cold yet, too early for frost, but it had a brittle clarity like breathing through worn bark. The scent of ripened berries was gone. In its place floated something raw, promise and loss tangled together. Autumn had a smell too, but this was not that. This was preparation. Today the tribe would pack. Today they would leave, or begin to. The camp, which had thrummed with water jar carries, laughter, hunting tracks, games by the river, and the powerful rituals in ochre and fire, would soon be ghost-like. Only the wind would remember what had happened here. They gathered silently. No one shouted. No one clanged pots. Everything moved in a hush that comes from the earth itself. The child helped, tying bundles of dried meat, folding furs, resettling children who did not understand why shoes were needed again, why rivers might be far away tomorrow. The visiting clan had left days ago. Their absence left a cool space in the world, like the bird that had healed and flown centuries ago. The visitors' laughter was a ripple that still echoed. The gifts exchanged sat in bowls, carried not by arms but by memory. The child gave the wolf bone to the fire tender, who would be passed to the next newcomer, another spark in an ember of kinship. The red feather remained, woven into the child's hair, a silent promise that some marks are meant to live with you. The field across the stream was now reawakened, not with summer grasses but with stalks bent into autumn shapes. The reeds had turned brittle, their heads heavy with seeds. The river slowed, its songs less giddy, more deliberate. The child paused at its edge, pulling off muddy moccasins, dipping toes into the crisp water to say farewell. They remembered. Skipping stones here, games of hide-and-seek with the stranger child, the first kill's blood mixing with stream and earth, the taste of water beneath a heavy sky. This river had carried summer's secrets. Now it washed them away. It always did. A group of children passed by, pulling a sled they had carved from driftwood. It would be useful in coming days, carrying meaty birds, firewood, harvest. The child smiled. They helped steer once, laughter echoing as the sled lost control and dumped a crate of berries into the dusty path. Those berries had been summer's gift. They'd taste of now and yesterday, ripe and sweet. Hut by hut the camp emptied. Fire circles cooled, skin and cloth were packed. Mothers tied in scarves and heaps of food. Fathers hefted spears and bundles of clothing. The dogs, aging and stoic, sat and watched. Some young hounds bounded off with curiosity, others stayed, as though sensing the rhythm of endings. The child carried a small bundle, a carved flute they had made in winter, cleaned and wrapped. It felt heavy-eyed against ribs. The flute's tune had called the evening stories. Maybe today it would call something else. As the sun reached its apex, the tribe gathered for one last something. Not a ritual, not a ceremony, but a pause, a shared breath before the exhale. They stood in a circle, adults, elders, and children, surrounding the cold fire pit. One by one they placed something there. A shell, a stone bone, a pouch of seeds, the wolf bone they'd brought back. No words, no speeches, just marks. When it was the child's turn, they knelt and placed the carved flute by the ash, their fingers sweeping out a small arc. In their mind, they bowed to summer itself, whispering, "Thank you." And the world seemed to shiver in reply. They rose. The tribe formed a line toward the southern ridge. Over that slope lay the wintering grounds, higher valley where caves sheltered frost breaks, where red berries lingered longest, and firewood waited dry between stone ridges. The path was known, but barely, not travelled in summer, perilous in autumn storms, inviting. The journey began. The child walked the middle, not leading, not trailing. They bent their ears to the wind because every season has its own voice, and autumn's was quiet, steady, harder yet honest, a kind of truth that asks, "What will you do when warmth leaves?" The path wound through stone forests, hollow pines, wide slopes guarded by hawk homes, whose sharp screeches chased clouds. The child looked up, remembering nights when owls had cooed lullabies from dark branches, and thought, soon our world might change again. But not now. Now. This. By midday they paused, ate bread of grains saved, drank from a mountain stream that tasted of minerals and sky. The chill pressed against skin. The child hugged braid tighter, adjusted fur. Birds called overhead, some that had hung back from summer flocks, now on the move as well. Migration in the human heart matched that in the sky. They reached the ridge near dusk. The valley below lay bathed in fading gold, turning bronze at its fringes. Caves lay ahead, open mouths in stone, shadows within waiting for flame. The child paused at the threshold and looked back. Behind ridges they had climbed in spring. The ancient trees split by lightning had still stood as sentinel even after lightning had cracked it. The stone by the river where stories had been whispered, the cave where they carved their name, the fire pit of shared laughter, all of it burned into memory, ashes of summer day warmth and light that would now slow. They inhaled. They exhaled. They stepped forward. The caves welcomed them with cold breath. They lit fires. They inspected nooks for candles, heat, protection. The child placed the flute near the new hearth and blew. A gentle note, no more than a whisper, but it echoed across rock. For a moment, a breath. It became the song of the tribe, an offering to what comes next. The wind outside rumbled softly. Inside, faces glowed in firelight. Children huddled under firs, mothers and fathers sat in quiet. The child watched embers flicker, saw summer's ghosts rise in golden sparks. Under tongue a single question. Am I still the same? When flames flared, they startled, but not as before. They were not child lost. They were child transformed. They had bled and healed, named and left their mark, laughed alongside strangers and torn at first partings, carved their longing into stone and felt a name was now theirs. They carried each echo, each ember, each wound into this new season. Their heart beat not just in their own chest, but in the rhythm of all that had come before and all that would come after. Summer was ending, but something else was beginning. The wind outside sang a final song of warmth, and in its place a deeper, steadier note. We survive. We carry forward. That night beneath the cave roof, firelight and softly flowing wind, the child closed their eyes not in longing but in readiness. For winter, for new stories, for the promise of seasons yet to unfold. And so they remembered. They weren't looking for it. The wind had shifted just enough to peel back the moss. The light at just the right angle made the gouges in stone gleam. A faint curve, a line like a river, a jagged mark that could have been a tooth or a mountain or a sun. It was not much, but it was something. Not a name, not in the way we write names now. Not a date, not in the way we number time, but a symbol carved by a hand now dust, from a mind that once burned as fiercely as our own. A symbol left behind, a message perhaps, or a memory, a prayer, or simply a game. No one can say, but the stone remembered even when the world forgot. And now, so do we. The valley is different now. No more smoke curling from the fires, no more laughter in the tall grass. The river still runs, but it hums to itself now, alone. The trees stand taller, older, but quieter. The earth has swallowed the bones and the ash, the footprints and the stories, but the mark remains. Even time could not erase it. Even wind could not wear it away. Even forgetfulness, that slow, creeping fog, could not make it disappear. Because once, long ago, a child knelt beside that stone. Their hands were small but determined, their thoughts wild but burning. Around them, summer bloomed ripe berries, birdsong, the scent of firewood and sweat and rain, but they knew it would not last. So they carved something that would. Not for glory, not for fame, not even for remembrance, but because they felt something, and that feeling had to live somewhere. Perhaps they had just said goodbye to a friend. Perhaps they had just tasted fear or joy for the first time. Perhaps they had just heard the story of their ancestors and wanted to whisper back, I am here too. We do not know their name, but we know they were human. We know they loved and feared and dreamed. We know they saw the moon rise and wondered. We know they sat by the fire and listened. We know they chased something, a bird, a shadow, a truth. And when they carved their symbol, they weren't alone. They carried with them the weight of generations, the warmth of a mother's hands, the lessons of a father's voice, the laughter of friends, the sting of loss, the ache of growing up, the breathless joy of being young. They were a child, and now, so many years later, their mark finds us again. You might be sitting in a chair, under electric light, with metal in your walls and glass in your windows. But that child is still in you. Close your eyes. Strip away the centuries. Forget the cities, the noise, the wires. Let your skin remember the sun. Let your breath fall in rhythm with the wind. Can you hear them? Can you hear the crackle of the fire, the creak of leather and wood, the slow hush of a story being told? Can you smell the summer in the air, the one before memory, before names, before time? That's them. That's you. History is not written in books alone. Sometimes it's scratched into stone, or pressed into mud, or woven into hair, or hidden in lullabies. Sometimes it's passed in silence, through the way a father looks at his son, or a grandmother holds a baby's hand just a little longer than needed. Sometimes it lives in bones, sometimes in blood, but always in spirit. And now, here you are, reading this, hearing this, feeling it, and remembering something you never knew you'd forgotten. Because every time a fire is lit, the first fire is remembered. Every time a child runs through the grass, the first tribe runs with them. Every time someone stops to wonder, the ancient ones smile in the dark. They are not gone. They are not myth. They are not relics in a glass box. They are breath. They are voice. They are the line behind us and the light ahead. So what will you carve? What mark will you leave? Not for fame, not for others, not even for yourself, but for them, the ones who come after, the ones who will kneel at your stone, the ones who will wonder who you were, and if you too ever stared up at the stars and asked why the world feels so vast and so small all at once. Because the truth is, you are not the end of the story. You are a chapter, a moment, a mark on the wall, and somewhere thousands of summers from now, someone will find your symbol. They will not know your name, but they will know you lived, and they will remember. Just as we remember now, look at your hands. You carry the fire. Breathe in. The same wind that touched their faces touches yours. Step outside. The stars are still there. You are not alone. Not now. Not ever. Because once, long ago, a child carved a symbol in stone, and because of that we remember. And so we go on,